The biggest problem the CEOs I work with have is not that they're not doing something, it's that they're doing too much. It has to be about the customer. It has to all be about the customer. And again, that sounds trite, but it's so true. Leaders that are technologists can surpass their limits by not worrying about their limits and focusing on the mission. The solution, Avetis, is do less. Don't try to turn up the volume like everybody else. The key is to design the category so that you're the only one with the solution.
That's great.
It's totally true.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Tech Leaders Playbook. Today's guest is Pete Steege, who is an expert B2B growth strategist and the founder of B2B Clarity. And I just found out a best-selling author of a wonderful book that we're going to actually get into a little bit later. He has decades of experience across startups and Fortune 100 companies. Pete specializes in helping technical founders grow into confident CEOs. So no more accidental CEOs, hopefully. He brings powerful blend of personal insights, battle-tested frameworks, and a deep understanding of what it takes to lead with purpose and clarity. All very important things, Pete. Thank you so much for being here. Excited to get the episode started.
Avetis, so happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Let's go from engineer to advisor, the journey behind the mission. Pete, tell us a little bit about what was the moment you realized your engineering career was evolving into something much bigger? Because it sounds like you might have been that accidental CEO.
I was.
There it is.
It was gradual, but that said, I have a specific memory. I was working in the Bay Area at a startup. As I started there as a design engineer, we were building this semiconductor capital equipment automated measurement system. And I had been drifting further and further kind of from the product to the field and the customer, right? Product manager, and what was out doing, calls and things. And I had an opportunity to go to Japan for a year with the company. And it was in this role where I would be customer facing, a salesperson. And at that point, that seemed like the dark side. That seemed like a really big jump for me. And that's when I kind of consciously made the decision, took a chance to say, you know what, I get so much energy on the customer side, the interaction, the engagement side. Took a chance and gratefully found that I actually was able to create as much out there as I could building things, because I really like to create, right? And so, yeah, that was a big step. Went back to school after that, and really my career changed to be much more about working with sales, marketing, growth, even operations, a lot of different industries.
Pete, was there a specific founder or an early experience that sparked your passion for helping accidental CEOs? Because I'm guessing over the years you ran into this a lot, right? Where you were an accidental CEO, but you probably were the first ones to spot that. Was there a specific founder you saw it in, or early experiences that made you want to do this as a career?
I think it was less about a specific founder that I can recall, and more about getting to a point. There was a threshold where the sum of my experience was such that I kind of had an epiphany, more generally than a single leader, that said, you know what, I'm here in this corporate world, and I'm contributing at this little level. I felt like such a small fraction of my contribution was really being my superpower, if you will, that it just occurred to me one day, what if I could find people that needed help that I know I can do, right?
Yeah.
And spent my time doing that. And that was 5 years ago when I started my business. So it was really more general than that. It was just the sum of the varied experience I had with a lot of different size companies. I will say though, Avetis, well, I don't think of a CEO in particular. I think of a situation that I saw over and over again, different size companies, technology companies. And that was, I'll call it the existential pivot. This technology that they'd built their business on was going away, or was, turning into V2O, and they were they were going to die if they didn't totally transform the company at that point. And so many of them in my history didn't make that jump. I think one example was I worked at Storage Tech. I don't know if you remember them. They were the huge automated tape libraries that were used for high capacity storage in data centers. This would have been the 90s or maybe 2000s. And well, the world was obviously changing, and they had disk, enterprise disk storage, but they needed to shift in a big way. And that was really a bridge too far. They were bought, but they're far gone. But that's one example. I could list another 5, but that existential pivot, I think as well as I do, change is accelerating. The whole AI thing. I've listened to your show and some of your guests. It's something's happening that's never happened at this speed and scale, and it affects pretty much every tech firm at some
business
level, right? So that transition I found is one of the things I can help clients with this concept of clarity and kind of removing the overhead and increasing agility, not in a tech debt kind of way, but in a mindset way as much as the technology.
Pete, you work with a lot of leaders who knows, maybe they say, hey, I didn't sign up for this. They didn't intend necessarily to be CEOs. What emotions or identity shifts do they go through as they're they went from the technical guy or the product guy or gal to all of a sudden I'm a CEO and I'm responsible for all these complexities and employee issues, and next thing you know, they're dealing with HR issues that are dragging them in, and HR tech and things that they really don't care about or really signed up for. What are some of those things that you see, the shifts do you see in them?
Yeah, you hit on some of them there. I would categorize them. One is this switch from logic to emotion, that they often are very comfortable in the facts and the calculations and the specifications, the things that are solid, right? That don't change.
Tangible,
physics related to leadership issues, personality conflicts, having an idea or a direction for either the company or a project that is right, but it doesn't go into them, right? And how do I do that? Not to mention, so that's one. And another really important dimension is the competencies that they haven't had experience with. People that aren't accidental CEOs in that seat, they've been preparing, right? They went to business school. They're financial experts. They have the underpinning. And even for them, it's hard, right, to be a CEO. Yeah. But imagine you're an engineer or a scientist, and here you are, and you need to do a fundraise, or here you are, and you have a legal challenge in your business, or HR, of course, but even operations. Sometimes some of that is a bridge too far, right? And that is amplified by the fact that when you're in the CEO seat, it's affecting so many more people, right? Yeah. It's you, but it's your employees. Their careers are on your shoulders.
Their lives, their livelihood. I mean,
their livelihoods.
This is very heavy stuff for most technical accidental CEOs, because I didn't sign up for this.
Exactly.
Pete, one thing you missed, is besides the business school and the professional training, a lot of times to have become a CEO, a professional CEO, these folks were probably leads, then managers, senior managers, directors, senior directors, vice president, executive vice president, COO, they've so many different barriers they had to constantly prove that they can handle more complexity, more employees, and higher level responsibilities and higher level of reporting. This elevation forces you to learn so much, where if I start my own company, I'm a CEO, I don't know how to spell CEO at that point, right? So this is very, very important. What advice do you give someone who feels overwhelmed by sheer weight of this leadership? Like, here I am, I didn't sign up for this, but I would say, so what? Now what? Like, do you want to step down and hire a CEO? Can you afford a CEO, or are you going to step up and be a CEO? What advice do you have for these people? Whether it's the person themselves or, frankly, their team who is struggling, because we forget they're struggling with a CEO that's not professional. Not because they're unprofessional, is because they're
Yeah.
not a professional CEO.
Well, first, to your last comment, I believe it always starts with the CEO, and that the right work with the CEO will take care of the team. We can get
Okay.
into that more later. My first piece of advice for the CEOs, and my experience, Avetis, is there's very few that I talk to that are questioning. They may be scared, but they are so committed. I think it's a
Mm,
part of being an excellent CEO. It's they care. This is more than a job, right? It's more than a career. It's this thing that they
yeah.
want to see. It's a legacy.
It's their baby.
It's their baby. The biggest advice I would give is the thing that got you here ain't going to get you there. That striving you talked about, that gut it out, you know, work harder, do that extra level is what kills CEOs,
Mm.
because the biggest problem the CEOs I work with have is not that they're not doing something, it's that they're doing too much. And turning up the volume, either on your priorities, your team's priorities, your message in the market, any of those things is not the right solution. The opposite, the unintuitive thing that is really success is where the clarity comes in, is to stop, be quiet, find the truth, anchor in the truth of your business, because so often they haven't. They're so focused on the capabilities and the thing they can do that they haven't really crystallized the true story of what makes them special and their business special. And so I encourage them to say no, quiet things down, get to that core, and then very intentionally do the right things, do less, but do it better in every uh, part of their job in their company. And that ends up being the best thing they could do, is to do less.
So it sounds like the chaos to clarity
Yeah,
methodology, right? So let's talk
nice.
about that. You
I
you
like
you
that.
actually talk about simplifying those complexities, which
Mm-hmm.
frankly could kill you if you take on too much. It either kills the because you're spreading yourself too thin, or it kills you because you're just burnt out. What does that actually look like in client engagement? Like, you're working with people, how do you simplify complexities?
We usually start with something. Well, first we start with a blueprint. We got to know what we don't know, right? So we do an assessment really of their situation as a CEO and the business situation. Almost always it's the business is not growing as fast as they want it to grow, so it's a stalled growth problem. They don't usually understand that they have gaps. That's a surprise to them. We do an audit on their CEO-ness on 5 vectors: growth, strategy, alignment, culture, and leadership. And that shows us, the bigger gaps there. And then on the company side, we do an evaluation of what's in the way of their company growth, the growth blockers, we call it. So that's prep work. The key starting place where the ahas happen almost every time is what I call the truth chain. So we go through an exercise to get to that truth, that what I call their true story, that hopefully it ends up being 2, 3, maybe 5 words. I'm not talking about a tagline, but it's when you say those 3 words, the team, oh, that's us. That's what it's so simple, but that's exactly what we do. That's why we're here, right?
Mhm.
That important identity is, you might call it your mission, you might call it your product market
Niche.
fit, your
Yeah.
niche, your brand.
Yep.
I think those are all getting at this, but so often you certainly don't want a corporate speak mission statement. That's not what I'm talking about, right?
Mhm.
It's this truth about who you are and who you help, exactly who you help, and what they get from working with you. So that is where we start. And the reason we need to do this truth chain, if you think of a chain, a 5-link chain, let's say it's a vertical chain, the top chain is your target customer. And I call them your bullseye customer because it's more than a target market, right? It's this very specific sweet spot of people that as soon as they hear those 3 words, they know exactly who you are and wonder why you haven't met them before. We identify that. So many of these accidental CEOs haven't done that work. They're not nearly focused enough. Once we have that, we go to the bottom and we say, okay, and who are we? Why did you start this business? What was it that made you take this chance and do all of this work? There's something there. And often, again, they haven't elucidated it, right? When we have those two, then we got to make the connection. Because what accidental CEOs love to do, those engineers, is they think, build it and they will come. I've got this great thing that we can do. I just got to tell them and they'll come running. And you and I both know that's not what they need, right? They don't care about you. They care about their problem and
Sure.
how to solve it. So this linking the chain is to get from your story to their story. So we look at their issues, their burning issues. You look at your capabilities. And then we come up with this magic link in the middle. That's how we can help you, right? That work is the most exciting part of the work. It really sets the stage. It's the resetting of what we're off to do, and from there we can come up with how do we do that, right? Because now we know the destination.
What are like 1 or 2 tools or mental models you wish more leaders knew about?
One favorite of mine it's one that you might dismiss it because you've heard of it so many times, and that's what I call is the map, gap, act process on a customer journey. So customer journeys. Oh yeah, I know what that is. I found that a very, very valuable framework that excellent CEOs can use to come up with what are the top 3 things that we need to be working on. Because remember, people are doing too much. Well, how do we find the 3 things we should be working on? The whole company. What I do is take them through a visioning process of their customer journey. So we say, remember that bullseye customer we've identified? Let's follow them in their journey, their experience with us, how we understand it to be, how we dream of it being, right? We believe they're going to love us. We have something that they're going to love. How would that happen? So we go through first, how would they first hear of us, right? Describe that in detail. How would they be curious about us enough to say, hey, let's have a meeting? How would they trust us enough to buy from us, to commit, right? And on and on. There's 7 stages. So we go through all that, and that's useful because they get clarity about, oh yeah, well, I guess I haven't thought about it, but yeah, we need to be here, right? And all those things. That's all good. The real power comes when you say, now we're going to go back through that and take stock of how it is today. And the gap between each of those stages and the aspiration defines a priority, right? A need. And so sometimes there'll just be some resistance along the way, right? Well, that's a problem. That's irritating or slowing them down. Sometimes it's a roadblock, right? They're just going, they're not able to get through it. And by the way, this is not a marketing exercise. This is a company exercise because your whole product life, everything your company does is encapsulated in that customer experience.
Well, it's all about value creation, right?
Yes, it is.
I mean, there's concept of creating like a category of one company, this exceptional company,
Yes.
but like it's not going to be done by some flashy new thing that you're trying. I mean, you have to have a tremendous product or service that the customers value. So without knowing what the customers value, you're kind of being random about it. Would you say?
Totally. I love what you said because I believe it has to be about the customer. It has to all be about the customer. And again, that sounds trite, but it's so, so true. Everything your company is doing should be looking at that customer journey to the value you're talking about. And if it's not helping you do that, you're wasting your time and your money.
Pete, tell us a little bit about your book and why you wrote it. And what's the value that people get out of that book? Speaking of value.
Radical clarity is what I've learned working with accidental CEOs on how they can grow both as a CEO and as a business, and kind of a step-by-step process to apply this idea of get clear, and clarity reveals meaning. And I'm just a big believer in meaning when it comes to business. People don't buy, people need a reason to buy from you. Companies need a reason to buy from you. And that comes from meaning, shared meaning. So I'm a big believer in use clarity to reveal meaning for your business and for you. Use that meaning to activate purpose in your business. And that's what drives your team and your prospects and your customers, everybody. So I use that process. I call it the clarity, meaning, purpose, or CMP growth wave. And the book describes how you start with that true story that we just talked about, and then you build on that by installing it in your business, your team, and then spreading the word to your clients with that same story. And then from there, leave a lasting legacy by, putting that into the business and the culture, so that when you're gone someday, and we're all gone someday, what you did isn't wasted, right? It sticks around. That's what the book's about, is to help these accidental CEOs figure this stuff out.
Why they're even doing what they're doing. Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Too often we're in love with our own solution. We forget the actual pain point. We forget the value. We forget, we're just doing it. And we try to just incrementally do things we do all the time, a little bit better, and hope the results change. And sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. Right. Let's talk a little bit about trust. Like how do founders earn that trust internally with their own teams, and then externally with customers? Because, again, sometimes these are 25-year-old guys that have never managed one person.
Yep.
So now they have to get the trust of their organization to believe in their vision, to believe in their mission, their core values, and their strategy. And so how do they get that first? And then how do they apply that externally with customers? I mean, you kind of alluded to it earlier, but I wanted to tap into that.
Meaning first. And what I mean by that is, we already I'll use the example we used earlier when I said that accidental CEOs are tempted to tell their prospects what their thing is, right? The capabilities. Yeah. So they're talking about themselves, right? And they've lost sight of the purpose of this all, which is solving that problem, adding that value. I believe meaning first, which solves all of this, is very simple, very hard, but very simple for a CEO. And it's one thing for all those things. And it's the idea that if you know that core truth, and you need to find that first, but once you know that, cling to that, use it, put that first. So with your team, you said, I'm 25. I have no idea how to inspire people, let alone manage them. And what do? They read books, and they're focused on the people, and their skills. Like, I got to learn how to be charismatic and that. I don't believe that's true. I think authenticity and generosity around, we have a purpose. It's this thing. It's simple. It's 3 words. And continually coming back to that, and let that be the inspiration. And whoever you are, you're delivering that, right? And then the pressure's off you. You don't have to be somebody you're not. Frankly, it's better if you're who you are, because that authentic purpose came out of you, right? Or with you. So that's true for your team. It's true for your sales and your marketing and your thought leadership. It's not about you. It's about your purpose, your mission. And focusing on that, again, it's so simple. It takes the pressure off you, the spotlight's off you, and you can be that young technologist with a dream. And you can focus more on the dream and the aspiration and the outcomes, right? And it's true with existing clients that will stay longer because they're on board. They're on the mission with you, right? I've just found, it sounds simple, but I've seen it work. Leaders that are technologists can surpass their limits by not worrying about their limits and focusing on the mission.
Pete, give us a story where this is exactly, someone was able to shift their mindset, was able to find these, and what changed in their business, and where are they now?
A great story to tell about a CEO I worked with. At the time, there were 3 partners. They had just started their company 2 years before, and they bootstrapped. They were excellent software test engineers, like really, really good at this. And they had worked in corporate together, so they had developed some really advanced enterprise software test engineering strategies. So when you had a test engineering problem that nobody else could solve in an enterprise at scale, they knew how to come in and just transform that, right? The problem was they were 2 years in and they had $1 million in revenue, which is really great.
Not bad.
But it was people they knew.
Mm.
And they came to me because, Pete, I don't know what this marketing thing is, or I don't know what this sales thing is, but all I know is I've tapped my network and we got to help these Fortune 100 companies, right? How do we do that? So we could have gone down the path of, all right, we're going to learn spin selling and we're going to get really smart and advanced and technological, because these are enterprise sales, right?
Yeah.
We did not do that.
Mm-hmm.
Instead, we worked on their true story and we came up with a wonderful thing. It turns out in that space, there's a thing called shift left, which is an ideology in test engineering, kind of like Agile. It's this idea that test engineering is broken because people do it after the software is coded. I mean, that's a simple way to say it.
Yep.
And the right way to do it, and this has been for 20 years, the idea has been in the industry, the right way to do it is to start at the source with a plan, right? Where it's there's a lot to it. But the amazing thing was every test engineering manager, executive understood shift left because they learned it. But they also knew that it was an ideal state that they were absolutely not achieving in their enterprise. Amazingly, nobody had grabbed onto that idea. So we were able to make that our message.
Mm-hmm.
We do shift left done right. We do shift left because it represented their special sauce. It was really close, right? So they were able to very easily say, what do we do? We make shift left work. Really and good. 4 months later, they landed a multi-million-dollar Fortune 50 enterprise deal.
That's huge.
Yeah. And again, we didn't have to over-instrument that. It was the truth of it that traveled. It's like, think viral, right? If you get the right story, it travels.
That's huge. What are some hard truths you see in leadership right now, especially in tech, that leaders are grappling with right now, that they're kind of stuck in more than they were a few years ago?
Well, a big one is AI. And there's a lot of dimensions to AI that are a challenge, but one in particular for these people is the content, the generation of content and communications, marketing and sales, thought leadership. Mm-hmm. The challenge is it feels like it's a foot race and that's accelerating every day. And how the heck can I compete with all this, right? And what I've found is it's similar to what I've said so far. The truth about AI is it's changing our world, right? The world is changing. I like to say marketing, it's breaking marketing. Marketing's broken. When AI can generate 100 times the volume of emails and good content that are currently out there. I don't know about you, my inbox is full. I can't read anymore. And if I asked AI to help me with that problem, I've just abstracted myself one more level from it, right? So now AI is summarizing things that you send to me. The solution, Avetis, is do less. Don't try to turn up the volume like everybody else. And that works for 2 reasons. One, you're doing me a favor because I don't need any more content. Yeah. Right? That doesn't help me. So anything you can do to make it easier and more efficient for me to learn and grow and improve my business, I value that. So that's one reason.
But how do you get into that though? Because that's interesting, right?
Yeah.
Because to get you to do that, businesses have to get in front of you. But to get in front of you, they've got to get in front of you.
Yeah, this is the opportunity. It's not easy. There's no easy answer. If there was an easy answer, AI would do it for us and everybody would be doing it. The exciting thing about this is the win is when you look at your company and your situation and you say, the most human wins. How can we be the most human here? And there isn't an easy answer. I don't have an easy answer, and it's going to be different for every company. But the ones that put the work in and are patient and are persistent, right, and have the grit to do it while everybody else is busy automating and turning up the volume, I don't know how, but they're going to find that next thing, right? Because we all know it's something nobody's seen yet, but that's going to be the win. So I encourage CEOs, it's scary as heck, to say, I know the whole world's speeding up, but that's going to be all canceled out mostly.
Yeah.
I need to find a way to be different. You mentioned category of one. It's related, right? It's the idea that you're exceptional and you can't be exceptional if you're joining the party. You have to find that thing where you're remarkable. Wait, wow, look at that. Let's have a meeting, right? Or whatever it might be.
Now, how do you share that remarkableness, right? Because you could be remarkable to a very small audience like that client of yours you mentioned. Hey man, we have such a good reputation from the 30 people we know, and we're able to get to $1 million in revenue. It's very respectable. We don't know how to market this damn thing. We don't know how to sell it. We're not salespeople. We're product people. We're engineers. It wasn't enough. So how do you break past that though, right? Because yes, you got to get great first, but now what? People have to know that I'm great. Otherwise, who gives a shit?
Yeah, and that's where back to the category of one. I don't know if you know Chris Lockhead in his category design. He's got a couple books. Really recommend that for your listeners. His belief is that every company can be the leader of a category. The key is to design the category so that you're the only one with the solution.
That's great.
It's totally true. That's what the shift left is, really. It's saying, you know what, we're in the shift left category. If you, whatever you they don't think of it as a category, but essentially they're not going to show up on a spreadsheet with the 3 different shift left alternative vendors, right? If they want that problem solved that way, they're going to have to work with that team. You need to find for your business that remarkable, I call it market singularity. We have to do it with them because they're the only ones that do it this way. It's good from pricing. It's good from competitive, but it helps with that awareness thing too. Not easy, but it's much better to have a quiet voice saying we're the only ones that can solve your problem than it is to yell loudly what everybody else is yelling.
You know, it's funny. You said something. You said, be the most human. I was talking to a private equity firm about a week ago, and they were like, hey, how did we actually get this meeting? Because I ignore 90% of those, 95% of those. And I said, because your email, even though I'm not interested right now, we're not there or close to it, but I was open to a conversation because your email was to me. And I could tell it was custom. It was actually custom written. And there was 2 guys on the call. One of them says, he says, how did you know? He said, thank you for noticing. He said, well, you're not the only one, obviously, but it was a very tight list of whatever amount of companies we needed to talk to in the next few months. It was like, that's it. I don't need to be, I'm not your only one. I'm not naive, but at the same time, this email has to be to me. Right. And it's really tough because it's like, there's FOMO. Right? I can finally, for the first time as a small company, I can compete with the big boys and how much emails I deliver and how much noise I can get out to my clients. So it's tempting and I can do it inexpensively. And I have a great product and great company and great service. So why not? So you get this FOMO effect. But the truth is, it doesn't really work. I noticed that. The louder you speak, you think like, oh my God, we only get 100 emails out a week. Imagine if we can get 10,000, we'll get, 100 times more results. You actually don't. You
I
really
think the
don't.
great analogy that we can all relate to is robocalls. Think back in the day and you think, there's this technology. We can send a phone message to like 1,000 people. It's going to be great. They're going to we can reach 1,000 people, right? It's the same thing.
Yeah.
It's the same thing.
Yeah, it's rough, man. It's rough. It doesn't work. What patterns have you noticed about CEOs who scale successfully versus the ones that stall out?
Well, for one, they're constant learners. They are able to let go of what worked last year, last month, right? They're open to change themselves and their business. I think of it as humility. The CEOs that succeed are humble. You might call that growth mindset too, right? The idea that they haven't arrived. They care, right? I said that before, but it really is important. If it's just a job and it's just about a transaction, meaning them making a big paycheck or the status that comes with being a CEO, that doesn't survive the dark times, right? There's times where you don't feel very smart at all, and you're actually like, I wish people didn't know I was the CEO right now. It happens. We're all human. The world's imperfect. So the ones that succeed are the ones that persist. That no matter what happens, the task at hand is more important than the temporal pain, if you will. That's really important. They have to have that grit and that ability to fight through the hard work. I'm just so impressed with. I was speaking with somebody the other day, who it's a pretty small company, and he has like half a dozen part-time employees, and he's working a full-time job to fund his full-time business that he's the CEO of. Oh my gosh. Good for him. I couldn't do that. Why was he doing that? He believes in what he's doing, right? That's enough. So I think that's, in a nutshell, that's the most important thing.
But believing in what you do is everything. As an investor, the first thing we ask is are you investing in your own startup? Especially if someone we know is independently wealthy, are they willing to fund it themselves? Can they bootstrap until they get to a certain level, even if it's MVP or at least getting your first 100 customers or something like that? If not, it's easy. I'm just playing with other people's money. Yes. And it's a challenge, and it's fun, and it's exciting. That's one thing. And then you talked about grit. It's like, I think it was Winston Churchill. He says, when in hell, keep going. So when you're stuck and it's like, just keep going, going. You're going to get to the other side, but you got to be strategic about it. That's really good stuff. Pete, remind us of that great book, because I always ask for a great book recommendation on the podcast.
Chris Lochhead. And I'm going to try to remember the name of he has several books, and there's 2 or 3 of them. So I think, let me spell his name. It's Lochhead.
Great.
But it's related to category design. That's kind of the
category design. Very good.
The books.
If last couple questions, if every tech founder had to read one sentence from your book on starting a company, what would it be?
Make room for meaning.
Make room for meaning. That's good. Pete, thank you, man. You've had, for such a rich and real conversation. Guys, for those looking to grow into a CEO with more confidence and clarity, make sure to check out Pete's book. Make sure you grab his book. You follow him on LinkedIn, and like and share this with everybody you know. And this is something new we've never done, Pete. Guys, ask a question for Pete or me on the, in the comments section, so we can understand what takeaway you got from this and what follow-up question you have for Pete that we didn't tackle. Because sometimes there's so much more, but we just can't get to it in an hour episode. Pete, thank you so much for being here. We learned a ton, man. Appreciate you.
Avetis, thank you so much. Can I offer one thing? I have
Please.
some bonus resources that I'd love to share with your listeners, and I'll have them on a page just for you. It'll be on my website, b2b-clarity.com/playbook.
Amazing.
And they'll be able to get I do an audit to see how they stand in the accidental CEO world, some worksheets from the book, some different things like that.
Amazing. Pete, if I could ask you for a favor, if you could comment when it goes live on the video, I think that would be the easiest way for people to grab that.
I'll do that.
Been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Avetis.
Take care, brother. And that brings us to the end of another great episode of the Tech Leaders Playbook. I want to thank you for joining us and hope you took away some valuable insights to apply in your professional journey. Don't forget to subscribe on your preferred podcast platform so you don't miss out on the next great conversation. I promise it'll be good. If you enjoyed today's episode, we'd appreciate if you could leave us a review. Your feedback not only helps us improve, but it also helps others discover the podcast. Better leaders mean better working environments. Better working environments leads to happier people. Remember, a rising tide lifts all boats. I'm Avetis Antaplyan, and this has been the Tech Leaders Playbook. Keep leading, keep learning, keep giving, and I'll see you on the next one. Until then, stay inspired, my friends.